Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so for the warm welcome. I am so excited to be in front of you today. Fun fact, so a little bit about me. I'm in developer relations, and of course, we do a lot of speaking. And of course, 2020 happened. 3 years later, this is my first in-person talk since 2020, so I am super pumped that this is my first talk since. So, thank you. So let's get into it. So today I have a message for you, more than anything. And it's a message from the future. It's a message from the future professionals that you will be working with. These are people whose code you'll be reviewing, people who you'll be mentoring, people who you will be sponsoring. And another thing about them is that they can't wait to meet you. They cannot wait to meet with you and work with you. And they can't wait to be you. So I'm going to share a little story about my experience that I had about 2 Sundays ago with a school. It's a little trade school that I teach at that's local. And what we do is we train students for about 7 months. We teach them full stack web development. So we go from the web, building a basic web page, all the way to building a full stack application with Postgres, Node, and React. And so at the end of the term, we pick a valedictorian. And the valedictorian does their speech, but they also demo a project at the end of their speech. Now, the demo that I have for you today is the first thing that she built about, let's say, 5 months into the program. So, and I was really emotional watching her present because, this was 7 months of dedication, 7 months of watching this group of young women grow into professionals and really building the skills that me and another instructor, Candace, had been pouring into them for 4 months. So this is the first React app that she built on her own, from scratch by herself. So we had a few courses where we had about 3 or 4 weeks specifically focused on React. And Candace would take the front end stuff because that's where she's more based in, and I would take the back end stuff. So I would do the Postgres and Node stuff. And so that was the first thing she built. She used an API and just used what she knew and built that. And so we essentially got them ready for their first role within 7 months. By the way, if anybody's hiring, please let me know. You have some amazing developers waiting to meet you. So it feels really good to tell this story because that's how we all got here. Step by step, little by little. Growth takes time. And to be honest, Candace and I really didn't do much here. We just shared what we knew to create the resources, the space, and the time for them to learn. And also, not to only learn, but to fail and try again, which is also a form of learning. And so I feel so lucky and honored and privileged to work with this up-and-coming talent like her. And it's what I do all day, in fact. So that school that I was talking about is something that I do in my work outside of my full-time role at Microsoft. But at Microsoft, I also work with new developers and students. So I'm going to share a little bit about me and what I do, and share my story of how I got into education. So I went the traditional route. I went to school, or what we call the traditional route. Went to school, got my degree, got my internship, got my job, and about 5 years in, there was an opportunity for a position at a community college. And so I jumped on it because what they were really looking for was not only an instructor, but an instructor that had industry experience. And I was like, that's me. I'll take it. And so this was a course on basic HTML, CSS, with a little bit of JavaScript. And I created the curriculum. I was asked to create the curriculum and essentially taught this evening courses over the course of a spring semester. In the US, that's from September to December. And what you're looking at here is really like the first week. So what I normally do in the top right here, this looks like a very basic semester website where I put all the examples of any notes and any homework. And what I try to do is I build that in front of the course. I build that in front of our students so they can kind of see what the process of from taking application from your local machine and putting it in the cloud looks like, just so that they have an awareness of what it's like. And they get to watch me sometimes struggle, sometimes fight a little bit with tooling. And I like to be vulnerable with them and like show them what I'm doing, because I feel like it just helps us connect a lot more. Another thing I like to do is I like to create examples of the homework. So what should the homework look like when you submit it? And so the yellow page there is, or this orange page there is, the first assignment they do is a basic HTML website with a little bit of CSS. So nothing super complicated. You can even notice that everything's left aligned. There's no real formatting or anything like that. Just enough to get them comfortable and get them ready to move on to those next steps of going on to CSS with like things like selectors and more fancy things. And so the expectation is the image on the left side, or your right side, where this student was able to replicate this recipe. And essentially what we talked about was essentially just structure in HTML, the difference between the unordered list and ordered list, little things like that. So, but honestly, to be honest, I didn't really know what I was doing, but essentially I had a plan, the plan that I just shared with you, sharing what I know and showing what the end result should look like. And eventually, what I did was just kind of think about what the experience I had in college and really channel that into my courses. So this is what I mean by I didn't know what I was doing. This is a slide that I'm really embarrassed to show, but I feel like it's very, very reflective of kind of what I was going through at that time. I just felt like I was kind of out of my league. I didn't know what I was doing, and you can kind of see like this slide is not really explaining much, not really doing much. But over time, I improved. I grew myself and got better. And around the same time is when I actually started to transition into developer relations at Microsoft. So before, I was a full stack dev, and then I eventually made a move into developer relations. So that's what I did the first 2 years, where I focused specifically on the .NET community and did talking, really improved my speech, and also this helped me be a better educator, because the way that I like to teach, I teach like I'm doing a presentation. I teach like I'm doing a workshop, so that we're all coding together, we're all building together. So about 2 years in, we had a shift in priorities, where we shifted not from just technology, but specifically into a particular audience, and I had kind of a choice on what audience I wanted to join, and I decided to go after the academic audience, so students and educators. And that's where I am today. And this image here was an image earlier this year where we visited Princeton University, that's in New Jersey in the United States. And we went to the Princeton Data Science Club and got to talk with some aspiring students about what they're learning and what they're doing, and just hang out and drink boba tea and talk and just have a casual conversation. And around this time, well, at least I would say about earlier this year, our priorities shifted even more, where we're now focused not only on students, not only on educators, but as well as new learners. And that's a really loaded audience right there, right? Because Everyone is a learner, right? We're all learning. And so we're focused on people who are new to coding, new to tech, as well as those who are looking to learn a new skill. So now I'm going to get into some of the challenges with that, and specifically challenges for students in that space. So, did anybody go to college here? Does anybody have any college experience or got a bachelor's degree of any type? So, I want you to go back in time and think about maybe your first few months. As a young adult, and this is experience for most people, they're quite young, you're separated from people who are there to help you kind of make decisions with you. So, for example, your parents might not be there in the room with you to tell you to do your homework, right? You're pretty much responsible for yourself. You're accountable, and it kind of feels like you're accountable for your future. And it can feel, honestly, like a lot of pressure. And we see this in the numbers here. These are numbers, they're based in the US, but more than half of students change their major at least once. They have this uncertainty. They're not sure what direction they should go. They're not sure where their future is going to lead because, again, that feeling of pressure on them. In fact, we can see here in the middle, they actually feel quite overwhelmed. 2/3 of students feel overwhelmed by the decision. But there's a silver lining here, at least in our industry, because anybody who decides to stick to or to move to computer science are more than likely not going to leave. And so these numbers, this 28% might look really high, but in comparison to some other majors, this is actually very good. So what can we do to really change someone's mind, draw them into our industry, and kind of inspire them and let them know that there's a space for you here? So now, another type of student is a PhD candidate. And the challenge with them is that, and I'm specifically talking about ones in STEM, who are doing things like chemistry, biology. Their challenge is that they may or may not have taken some kind of tech or programming course, and when they go on to do their research, they learn just enough to get the job done, right? They get the job done, and they get the results, they publish a paper, and then they go on to continue their research, but sometimes they carry that same habit with them. Now the challenge with this is, if any of you have built any little pet projects or any small projects, when we're building with these projects, we're usually not thinking about what we would say the right way, right? We're just building to learn something or get something done, get from point A to B, and we're not thinking about how to make it sustainable. But the conversations that we've been hearing is the need for research software engineers. And these are specific researchers who can build things for research in a way that makes them maintainable and reusable so that these experiments can be repeated. So, research software engineers spend a lot of time researching, and there's quite a few of them who would love to advocate for more researchers to kind of take this path so that they can build sustainable systems for their research too. But, of course, again, busy working on research. They're very high in demand. So quite a few challenges just in that space. Let's move on to new learners. So you all probably seen this. This is the Stack Overflow developer survey. This is 2022 so far. And when we think about new developers, we think about ones who are trying to make a switch, maybe to a new skill. So I'm specifically talking about maybe folks who are adults, maybe past college, maybe one of that 61% that there's 61% that wish they had actually changed their major. So they might fall into this category where they're trying to learn something new. And this can be kind of hard to do when you're learning a new skill while you're in a full-time position. And another thing that's interesting here is that the majority of the learners who are not in school are learning online, but a lot of information online. And we can see here a lot of them learn technical documentation and videos and things like blogs. But how can I help them not waste their time with outdated or incomplete information? And do they have a clear path from learning what they need to learn to get them to a place of employment? So this is kind of what I do in my role. We try to match the documentation to products to theory, from theory to practicality. So what are students learning in school? How can we make that practical in the real world when it's in the same situation for learners? It all kind of ends to this point of practicality. But all this to say, many people are trying to find their way. So what I dedicate myself to in this job is to give them just enough knowledge and inspiration so that they can handle the rest. For real, because the truth is that you give them an inch and they really make a mile out of that, and it's really inspiring. Another thing that is really important is unblocking barriers to access. So yes, there's a lot of free documentation out there, but what about the services that are used? Is it affordable for somebody to gain a skill that gets them employable at low cost? So these are the problems that we're facing as educators and also people who are working in this space, specifically around advocacy. So how do we do this? I want to talk a little bit about my experience at Microsoft. So there's a few ways that we interact with our students. First is the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador Community. This is a global group of college students all over the world who are really passionate about technology and want to share that with their peers. And what we do is spend our time mentoring them, working alongside them, as well as giving them the platform they need to actually do the job, their goal of reaching their peers. We also spend a lot of time listening to them and listening to them share what they're seeing and the struggles that they're seeing as students, as well as what other students are seeing, so that we can make our products and our documentation even better. Because who better to reach that community than the community itself? So, a lot of us on the team who work on this particular part of advocacy are, we've graduated from college quite a few years ago. And we're not very fully versed on the student experience today. So we want to reach that audience with people who really understand them. So these are, like I said, these are amazing individuals who grow, who we watch grow into amazing professionals, and some of whom we actually ended up hiring. And we actually get the honor of working alongside them in presentation, content, and things like that. So there's actually a group of two women I really want to speak about, Vidushi and Jasmine, who are experts pretty much in R. So we have this open source curricula, and I specifically own one called Data Science for Beginners. And they approached me and they were like, we know R and we're really great at visualization. Can we contribute to this curriculum? The curriculum was all in Python, and I was like, I don't know R, but go for it. So they built it, and then what we did was give them a platform to share it at the India Student Developer Day on the Microsoft Reactor, which is our global video platform for live streaming. So these are the things we do with students to kind of lift them up and give them that platform and give them that and let them step up into their own domain. So that's one way. Here's the other way, which is the Imagine Cup. This team right here is the winner of the 2023 Imagine Cup that we just had back in May at Build. So in the Build keynote, Microsoft Build keynote, Satya does his keynote, and then usually there's an announcement for the winners. But before they announce, there's essentially a presentation. Like there's three finalists do the presentation, they get some question asked, and then the winner is announced. So these winners this year is this team from Kenya who met at a hackathon, and they built this app called Tawi. And it's an app that helps children with auditory processing disorder. And it was inspired by one of the team members' siblings who actually suffers from this or has to go to school with this condition. And they were looking at ways to help them be able to have the same experience as other students in the classroom. Because traditional hearing aids can be quite expensive. So with this architecture, they essentially used AI to build real-time speech-to-text and audio enhancements so that they could filter out and suppress things like ambient noise. And what they built was an app that essentially just needs headphones. And so much work goes into these projects. Not only do they have to build this thing and really demo it off, they have to pitch it. They have to plan a pitch, a 3-minute pitch that they do live. They have to demonstrate its value. They have to demonstrate how it can be profitable. They have to demonstrate how make it accessible to those who may not be able to afford it, and really think about its future. So essentially, build a business plan. And again, like I said, they're presenting this all live. And so we spend our time helping them, coaching them, and giving them feedback on how to improve and tweak their presentation. So essentially, they build a vision, and again, we provide the resources and our access to our time and our feedback. And again, these are still students. They are making change in their world while doing homework and studying. It's really cool and inspiring. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges students and learners face. So we're gonna go back in time even more here. Anybody remember GeoCities? Can anybody tell me, or can anybody say that GeoCities might have been the gateway into your career? Sure was mine. So for those of you who might not be familiar with GeoCities, essentially it was a free hosting site back in the 90s, early 2000s, and you could essentially create a website. And it was really this amazing pathway into digital creation. You were able to build pretty much whatever you wanted and really stretch your imagination online and share with others. And what I find so profound about things like GeoCities in that time is that it really created a generation of programmers who helped build the platforms and tools and languages that power our most popular applications today. And this new generation of developers today, the new generation of developers, are inspired by these creations, the ideas and dreams that we didn't think possible. And we showed them how to build these things too in our talks, our blogs and video, all that content that's online. And I don't think we realize how inspirational we are to upcoming devs. Just being able to create an app from scratch is that students, their eyes light up. They think it's really cool. Pushing something on Git, pushing something to GitHub, they think that's really cool. And so you all are most likely inspiration to somebody who might be a fly on the wall watching you work. And these students, these learners have a wealth of information and tools available from the build these things themselves. They're really savvy and they're resourceful, but they are overwhelmed. So that student that I demoed that I showed you earlier, that second slide, believe it or not, her and her classmates had a hard time navigating their operating system. So in the first month, we wanted to help them learn how to use the terminal and Git and GitHub. But we realized that we needed to take a step back because we would walk through an exercise and we'd come back to the next class and they'd have a hard time finding the work that they worked on last. And so we spent some time letting them get comfortable with the operating system, showing them things like shortcuts. And these are the little things that we take for granted. The hotkeys, the dot files, automation, and all the other things that we use in our development environment every day. It's a challenge for students to know how to use those things as well as learn how to build solutions in the language that they're trying to learn as well. So it can be quite overwhelming. So they have a lot on their plate to learn. And one of the challenges for us is, how do we kind of trickle this information to them so that they don't feel like they don't feel overwhelmed to the point where they give up. Because I feel like sometimes when a student kind of is like floundering or kind of feeling like they're behind, they get into this place where they kind of shut down and they feel ashamed and they don't feel like they want to reach out and they don't want to feel like they want to ask for help. And that's a place I don't want them to be in. So, how do we make it much easier for them to feel comfortable asking questions? The last thing I'm going to share here with you is the challenges that a lot of learners face. And that's really comes down to a specific demographic of adults. So in the US, about 3 million people have gone and tried to get some education and on the way, but did not complete it. And 70% think that it's a challenge to return because of the financial cost, or the cost. As you know, in the US, school can be quite expensive. But there are quite a few states and areas within the US where you can go back to school for free, especially if you have a family. But that proves another challenge. How do you find the time to go back to school if you have all these other responsibilities? And I find that really not only a big challenge, but also a very big lost opportunity. I really love getting to hear people's stories who come from non-traditional backgrounds, because I find they add so much richness to our community and to the things that we're building. In developer relations, we spend a lot of time speaking, a lot of time, connecting the community. And so the people in developer relations that I really love to hear from, I love hearing from everybody, but specifically people who come from a theater background, they have this special knack for being able to really captivate and capture the audience in ways that I just don't think I'll be able to do. And I love to watch people with theater background do that. So there are so many people, we're missing out on so much innovation because of these stumbling blocks and really these challenges that everyday learners face. So, how can we make it so that everyone feels capable of gaining a career or an opportunity as a developer? How can we keep them motivated to keep going? There are a lot of ways to answer this, but I decided to boil it down really into 3 particular areas. First, think about the assumptions that you're making. So remember how I was saying that the students that they were new to really navigating the operating system in the way that a dev normally would? I just assumed that they were comfortable with that, and we had to take a step back. And so for you, if you're in a meeting, especially when you're in a meeting with newer developers, maybe consider not using things like acronyms, jargon, things that somebody might be afraid to speak up, especially when the flow of a conversation in the meeting is going quite fast. Another big one is that idea of shame. This particular industry, we run into a lot of imposter syndrome, right? Where people feel like if they don't know a particular topic or know a particular thing a particular way, they feel like that they're not learning or they're not doing their job right. And I think one thing that we can do is to really celebrate anybody's a chance or opportunity to learn. So what I mean is that, in the open source curricula, I'm looking at merge requests quite often. And sometimes the work that a contributor will do will not be something that I can merge. And so one of the first things I like to do is just say, thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for taking the time to learn and to contribute to this project. And then I go into why it's not mergeable and thinking about some opportunities and ways to make it so. And I try to do this also in the classroom. When somebody answers something, gives an incorrect answer, I say, thank you for answering, thank you for speaking up, thank you for being vulnerable. I think it's a really great way to keep somebody motivated and not make them feel like they did something wrong. Because all they did wrong, or the only thing they did was right was learn. The only thing they did was learn, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Another thing about this is, so pretty much here is like, just be a cheerleader. Be excited when somebody tries. Another thing is to be approachable and be real. So, I know time is a precious resource that we all don't have enough of, but it can mean the world for you to spend time with somebody and help them through a particular bug or anything like that, even if it's a code base that you're not familiar with. But at this point you have enough experience to maybe find your way, right? So, somebody asks you, can you help me take a look at this particular problem, even though you're not an owner of it? Just being able to just say, yeah, I can take a look, really helps them show that you care. And it's even better if you don't figure it out. Why? Because they get to see that sometimes we don't have all the answers, and this is an opportunity for us to learn. It's really important that we don't act like we're the smartest person in the room, because if we are, then what are we doing here, right? And I like to do this in my classroom by when we're pair programming or coding together. Sometimes I accidentally make a mistake, and I love when students ask me or say, hey, I think that's wrong, or we're debugging together. Then it's very immersive. And it's not just me teaching, it's us learning together. Excuse me. Another thing is to just be patient. Again, growth takes time. And then finally, allow them to be themselves. Allow them to be creative, and bring them on in the journey. So for most junior developers, most entry-level developers, they are usually getting acquainted to the code base by fixing a bug, right? So when they come into stand-up or meetings and people are asking for feedback, they're usually like, oh, I'm just fixing bugs. I don't have anything of value to offer here. But that's not true. And we don't want them to keep having that, or that habit to persist throughout their career. We want to hear from them at any level, because they have having a different perspective than people who are in this particular system or code base for however long. So, again, this is an opportunity for them to grow professionally as well as technically. Excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of water here. But while I do, I want you to think about somebody in your life who's done either one or three of these things for you. I want you to think about them while I take my sip of water. So this is an invitation for you to reach out to that person and tell them thank you. Thank you for your time and effort that you poured into me to get me to where I am today. And finally, the second part of my invitation is for you to pay it forward and change somebody's life. Thank you.